basically seek opportunities where I could speak Japanese. So I came across a language exchange club in the West End of London, and over there were lots of Japanese folks who came to London who were learning English, and lots of like local folks who were learning Japanese. And basically the idea was that folks would gather together and do a language exchange. And I thought this was like really great because it's basically enabled me to like meet lots of Japanese folks. And here are some of my Japanese friends over here. So at this moment in time, I was staying with my mum. This is my mum over here, and lived with her for a while. And but even though I lived with my mum, I also spent time working. Oops, wrong way. Working at my dad's place. So my dad makes shoes, and I was learning how to make shoes. And so my dad had lots of different clients, like Lady Diana, and so he would like design the shoes. I had the privilege of actually making those shoes. So he would say, okay, this is a design for Lady Diana, please make it. So I had like the honor of doing that and learning how to make shoes. So I still know how to make shoes, and sometimes I go back to London and go to my dad's studio, and I basically raid the studio. I like take bits of leather, take lots of different bits and pieces, and I make stuff. So one thing I made very recently was this shoe over here, based on the character we all know as Black Rock Shooter. So it's over here. There's another design over here. Okay. So the blue things are like the Black Rock Shooter flames. And yes, they're called Black Rock Shooters. I'm going to change my my remote control because it doesn't reach really far, and I just happen to have one over here. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to pull this out. There's going to be a lens on the screen. Alright. So look, let's see if this works. So, 2 seconds to turn this on. It doesn't have any batteries. Very lovely. So, I'm going to use my old remote control, and I'll just try to stay closer to. Hold on, everything stopped working. Give me a second. Okay, there you go. So this is the back of the heel. Try to keep in the Black Rock Shooter stuff. And this is the front of the shoe as well, which has lovely the Black Rock Shooter white zip. So currently looking into how we are going to bring this to the world, and I'll be talking to Aki-san. So Aki-san, he's like the boss of a good smart company, and he's actually helping me on this project. So he's going to be here right after this. And this is my dad, if you just wondered what he looks like. So he plays Darth Vader, and he said, "Join me." And I said, "No, but I love Japanese culture." So because I did love Japanese culture, I felt that staying designing shoes wasn't going to help me get to my destination. So basically I left my dad's studio to do things which would get me to my destination. And one of the things I did was work in a Japanese restaurant called Benihana. So over there, it was a fantastic experience. I got to speak like lots of Japanese with the customers and with other members of staff as well. And it was a place where I also met my wife. No, not this one. And not this one either. But this one over here. So it's a great place which I got to really discover my path to Japan, basically. So after meeting my wife, we decided to move out of house, and we moved to this little, really dingy apartment in Earl's Court. Even though it's really dingy, it had there was a family there, and it was a family of insects which would welcome me by biting me. And so here I am trying to board up the floorboards so that I wasn't bitten by these pesky insects. So working at Benihana basically enabled me to save enough money every year so that I could come to Japan to absorb the culture, which is what I did. And so this is one of the first times of me being in Japan, in a place called Shinjuku. Shibuya. And as you can see, so Shibuya right now, there's like a big crossing and there's a very big Starbucks. And so this is a time where they didn't have Starbucks over there. So what I did was, one of the things I did to motivate me was to record the sounds of all the places I went to in Japan. So when I was in Shibuya, I got myself one of these mini disc recorders, and I sat on this ledge in Shibuya, and I recorded the sounds of Shibuya. And basically what I did was, when I went back to the UK, was to listen to these sounds which I heard when I was in Japan. And by listening to those sounds, it made me remind myself that I want to be listening to these sounds not through this recording, but through my own ears. So this is one of the things that I've done. So after a while of learning Japanese on my own, my Japanese became very colloquial, so very like daily language. But I knew that in order to like succeed in Japanese culture, I needed to basically brush up on my Japanese language abilities, my business Japanese. So I decided to go to London University, the School of Oriental and African Studies, and this is at the front of my university. So when I was at university, I got another part-time job at the airport with Japan Airlines. So I was basically ground staff at Heathrow Airport, and I was like guiding around lots of like lost Japanese folks, making sure they get on the right plane back to the land of the rising sun. And again, this was an absolutely fantastic experience. I got to speak like lots of Japanese on the job and earn money at the same time. Oops. Okay, so this was actually the first time in my life where I gained decent grades. It's actually top grades at my university. And I was actually learned very recently that like only 20% of like folks in the UK, they get like honors. And I think that was because like I was really passionate about the language and really focused on like basically learning and absorbing as much Japanese as possible. And of course, SOAS is a great university as well. So when I graduated, one of my superiors at Japan Airlines, they said, Danny, why don't you join us in Japan Airlines as an engineer? And I actually went along the interviews and actually got a position as an engineer with Japan Airlines. Now, one of the reasons why I got this job, even though I didn't have any computing qualifications, was because I took out a loan, a student loan, and I got myself a computer. And I would take apart this computer and I would like install like Windows 95 in like English and Japanese and Korean and so on and so on. And that experience basically earned me a position at Japan Airlines. So I joined Japan Airlines for just over a year. And when I was at Japan Airlines, I realized that even though I was speaking Japanese every day, even though I was in a Japanese company, I wasn't in Japan. And so I started to like look around for job positions. And I found myself a job position with a company called Nature. They are a scientific journal, scientific magazine. And basically, I went along to the interview in London, and the boss at the interview, after like a few interviews, and he said to me one day, I'm going to send you to Japan for 1 week. I'm going to pay for your trip and hotel. I'm not going to pay you any money at all. And I'm going to give you lots of tests and lots of interviews. If you pass, I'll bring you on to Japan. If not, it's your fault. So I said, sounds like a deal. So I took the deal, and before I knew it, I was like packing suitcases with my wife, and we got a one-way ticket to Japan. So that's how I ended up in Japan. So, for most of my career in Japan, I worked in the internet, and so I was a website manager at Amazon.com for the Japanese website. I was a product manager for Microsoft for all their Japanese services, and then after a while, I left Microsoft to start up my own company called Mirai Kabushiki Gaisha, Mirai Inc. And and basically we set up the company, and basically now I do everything under the brand of Culture Japan. Before I continue, and before you fall asleep, I'm going to show you a video just to wake you up. Okay, I'm going to play a video, and I want the folks in the back to dim down these lights and turn the volume up just a little bit. Lovely. Thank you. All right, so I haven't done that for a while, and probably should dig it out of the cupboard one day. Anyway, so going back to what my company does under the Culture Japan brand, and I'm just wondering, did anyone stretch the screen? If you've stretched the screen, maybe not stretch it so much. Is it okay? It looks okay. All right, so my company basically shares Japanese culture with the world, and we do that through many different methods, basically. So one of the methods is obviously the internet, and so I have this website at culturejapan.jp. If you type in culturejapan.jp, you will get there. It still lives under the dannychoo.com domain. And basically, we do the content in English, Japanese, Chinese, Spanish, and French. So the sort of things which I write about are pop culture. I absolutely love Japanese pop culture. So this is me at a maid at-home cafe in Akihabara. Look at this gorgeous car. This is called an Ita-sha. And so basically a car plastered with lots of cute 2D girlies. I cover things like daily life in Japan. So I think there's lots of other blogs out there which cover like travel and so on and so on. But I really like to show folks like what it's really like to live in Japan. So basically when I'm at the hospital, or when I'm taking the driver's test, or when I'm buying a house, not when I'm buying a house, I mean I only buy a house once, or when I'm buying a car, so on and so on. Basically let people know what the process is, and so people know what it's like to like really live in Japan. So, oops, jump. Tradition, absolutely. So Japanese pop culture is fantastic, but Japanese tradition is like just absolutely awesome. And I think many of you who watch Japanese anime will see that there's lots of tradition in the anime titles as well. We cover fashion, and we'll be doing like much more fashion to come. We cover lots of technology. This is actually a parking area in a place called Shinagawa, whereby your bike goes in, and this huge machine comes and sucks it deep into the ground. And so it's absolutely fantastic, amazing piece of technology. And we cover travel. So this is my ninja blade. So I actually there's a place called Edo Wonderland in Nikko, north of Tokyo.